does change how you think. But it was definitely when I think about how much work, how it's definitely during COVID, so like the late nights and global role from London, you
Mm-hmm.
suddenly realise how many hours you've put in, and it does make you reflect on priorities.
Yeah, so many people think legacy is something we leave behind at the end of our lives, right? But often legacy is actually happening in real time through the people we influence. Your niece, has your niece influenced you how to think about success and what truly matters?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's always a journey with me, I think.
Mm-hmm.
There are times I'm sure if I go back into corporate life, it will be extremely hard for me not to fall back into old habits of
Mm-hmm.
working every single night, every single weekend, every single holiday, because it is about how I'm wired. And it's about knowing that in yourself and those drivers. I think is really important. And also not giving yourself a hard time about stuff like that,
Mm-hmm.
because it is who you are.
Mm-hmm.
As long as you're conscious about how you manage that, I think that's what's important. I think with having like family, niece, and stuff like that, like it does make you more plans about not missing out on those special moments and making sure that, not feeling guilty that you're taking half a day to go to a performance, because actually the energy that that gives you, you bring back in a much more positive way when you come back to work or come back to whatever activity you were doing before. So I think it does influence. And when it comes to the success, like success for me is having a much more balance in my life where
Uh-huh.
I feel that work, life, you sometimes like I sometimes talk about it a lot, and I kind of fed through a lot at Facebook. It's almost like work-life priorities, right?
Uh-huh.
There are times at work that work is the priority, whether you've got the day before you're launching something, that is the priority. There actually might times where, if work does is a little bit slow or there's not as much happening, that life is 100% a priority. You might not
Yeah.
do a full day because actually, and that's where consultancy and going independent gives you much more flexibility
Yeah.
around that.
Freedom.
That you might be working every single night, and actually, that's okay. Work-life priority rather than this constant chase for balance. I think it's an interesting debate to have whether you are prioritizing versus trying to get that balance.
So the question now, the new one, is what aspirations excite you now?
Like my most exciting role that I do is working as an independent custody visitor. So going into the police and
Mm-hmm.
checking on the welfare and the rights of detainees in police custody.
Mm-hmm.
I just find that so rewarding, and there might be little things that you change ever so slightly, you get exposure to like inspectors and chief inspectors giving that feedback about what you've observed, like what's great, what's going well, questions that you've got about someone's care. Like I find that so rewarding, and I'd love to do more work from like that. That's what gives me my passion out. Like that's what I really enjoy. But equally, from a consultancy side point of view, we're doing some work, some paid work for some charities, and again, the construction of those deals mean those charities are getting brilliant expertise, brilliant delivery. And again, it's that balance between making sure that we're doing the right thing and making this better for that charity. And ultimately, they can serve their vision better because we're there helping them do that. So it's that real piece about how you have an impact on whether it's a charity, whether it's an organization, a big corporate, what that's what drives me more now is the impact I can have rather than it being that kind of next step seniority and next big role.
Okay. You talk about, obviously you work with large multinational corporations. You also then now are operating more independently as an independent consultant, and you are working with different charities. So when we look at all of those experiences, what leadership lessons have remained constant for you regardless of those different roles?
I think having your core values
Mm-hmm.
for me is so, so important because when you work in corporate life,
Mm-hmm.
you don't agree with every decision that's being made.
Mm-hmm.
But there are times as a leader you need to back up that decision
Yep.
and you absolutely lead through and you lead from within to get through that moment, whether you agree with it or not.
Mm-hmm.
Where things change for me is when decisions go against my core values.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a very different conversation that I would have with myself.
Mm-hmm.
So I think really understanding your core values about, like for mine, 100% like universal human rights, doing the right thing, and all they're the ones that guide me every single day in terms of like that core value. Oh, I hate any inequality. That whole piece for me, that is the total red line. But again, it's like knowing that and staying true to those values. Like you can change your leadership style, you can change your behaviors. Like sometimes you might need to be a little bit more corporate in a meeting,
Yep.
however you want
Mm-hmm.
to do it. But what does not change is your core values. And I think for me, like that's always been a factor, probably even very early days, like back at college or back at university. Like those core values probably haven't evolved that much because it is about doing the right thing, universal human rights, and all that
Yep.
stuff. That's what I truly believe in. And that's for me, like almost is the anchor to my leadership in style, if you like.
Is staying to your core, which I think
Yeah, exactly.
is touching now to authentic leadership. So, like, can you expound more for you what's authentic leadership?
Um, I think for me, it's probably very similar to what I've just said. Actually, it is about sticking to your core
Mm-hmm.
values. And, people always say to me, like, oh, when people talk about being like truly authentic, oh my gosh, does that mean you have to share everything about your life?
Mm-hmm.
Well, no, actually, it doesn't. What it does do, it gives you the opportunity to be who you are
Mm-hmm.
and to role model how you see your life. I will never hid the fact that I am LGBTQ leader.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's one of my core things that whether that caused difficulty in certain jurisdictions, whatever, that's one of my core beliefs. Like I will be myself and talk openly
Mm-hmm.
about that.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that's not oversharing. That is who I
Exactly,
am.
it's who you are.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a bit like when you go into an office and people talk about, oh, what you do with kids this weekend?
Mm-hmm.
I always say like, oh, me and my husband did this today.
Mm-hmm.
That's just normal life conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's about being your true, authentic self, about that is a conversation that everyone has in the workplace. So it's not about oversharing. It is about those natural conversations about how you get those human connections. So I think when it comes to authentic, I think it's really difficult to say you are a true, authentic leader if you are not almost true to yourself and true to your own values, if you like.
Okay. Aside from staying to your core, as you've mentioned, what other leadership qualities do you think organizations, whether it's corporate or non-corporate, need more today?
I think for me, it's there's a lot about like compassion. I
Mm-hmm.
think
Mm-hmm.
it is a tough, like economy wise, it is tough in terms of like the questions around equality right now. Like it's a tough world to be in if you do not fit what people think you should be. So I think in terms of like that compassion in a leader, I think is really, really important. And I think it's also about like how do you influence change from whatever position you're in an
Mm-hmm.
organization? It's not about your title, it's about the impact you can make with your expertise. I think for me, I'd love to see more of that in the workplace. Like it's not this top-down way of working. It is about the qualities, experience, and who you are, you bring to the organization, not just about like your VP or head of. That for me I still think is a little bit weak when you see in some organizations. It's still that kind of hierarchical decision making rather than empowering and getting people to make an impact regardless of where they sit in the organization.
Oh, that's lovely. If I just do a playback, what you've said is stick to your core, have more compassion, and actually show that you can influence others to create impact, and also obviously for yourself to also create impact for others. So
Yeah.
that's great. So if you are to advise young leaders today and young professionals who are trying to find their own leadership style, what advice will you give them?
Without sounding repetitive, I think
Mm-hmm.
it's the core values, like for me,
Uh-huh.
like find what you believe in,
Mm-hmm.
what absolutely drives you, like where do you get your energy from?
Yep.
Like they're the things that shape you. And like you said, when you go into corporate life, it's not as easy as I've
Yep.
just said.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there are times where you have to maybe do things that like you don't think is the right business decision, but hey, that's life. But as long as that does not impact your core values, and I think that for me it anchors how you show up, how you behave, how you talk about yourself, how you coach your team, how you lead your team. For me, just really get into that, like what you believe in and those core values. It really helps you that authentic self, but also it's something to anchor on when you need to make tough decisions or maybe things are not going right. I think they're a really important part of who you are and who you are as a leader. So for me, that's probably the bit, and it takes time to understand that about yourself, but I think they're the ones that don't tend to change. It's how you show up and your behaviors that kind of alter as you more mature as a leader.
Okay, great, great. Shifting gears now, Yuan. So one of the principles I've talked about is actually empowerment. It's really using your success to lift or help others. And one thing that particularly inspired me about your story is your involvement with the charities that you've mentioned. You mentioned about the custody visit, and the other charity you talked to me about is Children of the Dumb. So, for listeners hearing about these organizations for the first time, can you tell us more about it and what's the mission of these organizations?
Yeah, cool. So the one that I've been working quite closely with at the moment is the Scar Free Foundation, and they're a
Mm-hmm.
medical research charity. And their mission is to eradicate scarring.
Okay.
And for someone who has lived with scarring back into my 20s, like it's such a powerful thing. No one understands unless you have scarring the impact that has on you
Mm-hmm.
mentally, physically, and in society when people question, oh, what's that? Oh, and
Mm-hmm.
you automatically have to explain what that
Mm-hmm.
scar and the history is. Very, very passionate charity. They do some amazing research to support that. And it's, everything from kind of post-surgery, military, when they've been
Mm-hmm.
injured. It's an amazing, amazing charity. And then the other one that I've just recently started working quite closely with is one called Children of the Dumb.
Mm-hmm.
And I deliberately sought out a charity that supports activity in the Philippines. So, as you know, like
You
Philippines
love
is
my home country.
well, it has been. I always say it has been a absolute consistent throughout my career,
Mm-hmm.
and that's from Pearson, from Facebook through to Entain. It
Yep.
has been a huge part. And I also think it has given me a lot for my career as well,
Mm-hmm.
because without the fantastic talent in the Philippines, I wouldn't have been successful
Mm-hmm.
in those roles. I've even got my tattoo to remind me of my Philippines days. And for me, I actively now seek out charities that I'm really passionate about.
Uh-huh.
So there are not, I think every charity does a fantastic job, but obviously you do need to kind of prioritize where you spend your time. And for me, making sure that I pick charities that I can really make a difference on. So I've been working with them not so long actually, just the last few months, getting to know their board and what they do, and they do some fantastic work about giving children who are in absolute extreme poverty in
Mm-hmm.
Manila and giving them the opportunity to study, to school, and to have that education. So that whole thing about making things better, like giving people who would not have had that opportunity because of societal structures, giving them the opportunity to go into education and to be able to better that life, I find so rewarding. So I'm really excited to hopefully do more work with them because I think from a really small charity, the impact that they have on a community is so impressive.
Yeah. So for many of us spend our days worrying about careers, promotions, deadlines, and professional growth, right? Yet, as you've spoken just now, there are children whose concerns are food, safety, education, the basic structural needs. How did seeing that reality affect you?
I think, you know, it's a bit like when I moan about like I had a horrible schooling, hated the strictness, I hated how religious it was. That's nothing compared to the childhood that some people are going through right now, whether that's here in the UK or whether it's elsewhere. And I think when you hear some of the success stories of people not having to, go through the rubbish picking and the dump picking in Manila, and actually going through education and going through schooling and learning. It's such a fascinating experience to see. And I think again, core values for me is making things better. That absolutely is making lives better. And I think that's what I absolutely love being part of that charity. And like I said, really early days, but I'm definitely hoping to do more with them because I just think the impact that they have and is so impressive in the Philippines.
Okay, so when you think about those children then, and you have a niece, so including your niece, and the other beneficiary of the charities that you support or the work that you do, what
Yeah.
hopes do you have for their future?
It's really interesting though when you look at like the future of like Oliver's nine, and it's quite a daunting future at the minute. She's got the whole concept of things like AI. You've
Yeah.
got the impact
Mm-hmm.
of like what is the workplace going to look like?
Yeah.
And I think for me, if you look back over history, it is about keeping things in perspective. Like been so many like revolutions within kind of employment and industry that have changed the way things work. But again, it's about how we adapt and how we plan for it. I think for me, I do hope that we grow people grow up in a much more kinder world than it is today. Like I think about some of the conversations I was seeing around kind of race and trans rights and things like that. It does not feel like it's going in a great direction. And I think for me, my hope is that the world is in a much kinder place than it is today. And, from one person trying to contribute to that, it's difficult. But if I can at least have an impact within my influence, that's what kind of really drives me at the minute. And that's my hope for, when you look at people entering work today, entering an initial HR job today, very different to how it was. Not back in the day. That sounds like I'm so old, but in terms of like the 2000s, it's very different, and that career progression looks very different because you don't necessarily have those middle roles where you
There's no
build that
layers now.
career.
It's a bit
No,
flatter.
exactly. So I think it is tough, but I think for me right now it is about like, how do you make it a much more kind of world and that tolerance of differences and embrace those differences. I think so important. And that does worry me in terms of what that legacy leaves behind.
Yeah, and I empathize and I completely understand that. As you know, I have an 11-year-old son. I always worry about, oh my God, what future holds
Yeah, yeah.
for him. Yeah. Uh, anyhow, hopefully, several professionals listening today may want to help some, if not all, of the charities that you've mentioned. How can people support those charities then?
Yeah, and I think so with the children that's obviously sponsoring a child would be a fantastic
Mm-hmm.
opportunity for us. So I think again, that's a really big key one, and I'll make sure that we share the links as
Yes.
part of the
Mm-hmm.
podcast. And I think again with Godfrey Foundation. We've just had one of our trustees do a skydive and raise nearly £4,000
Oh,
for the
that's great.
charity. So definitely more activities to raise money on that one would be fantastic. But again, I would definitely get people just to reflect on it's not necessarily like donating, but doing activities to raise money for some of these charities who are, it's a tough market for the charities at the moment, especially some of the smaller ones. How we can contribute, whether it's time, expertise, I think it's really important to reflect on.
Okay. And definitely share the links with me, and then once we post the
Thank you, Caroline.
podcast, we uh include the links to those different charities so that they can help. The final Alex principle that I've been advocating for is excel, Yuan. So one phrase I often say, and I think hopefully you've heard this from me when we were working together, what you cannot measure, you cannot achieve. But some of the most meaningful things though in life are difficult to measure. So how do you define excellence today?
Think excellence for me, it is about the impact you have. Like
Okay.
that for me is so much important. It's almost like achievement and impact for me are very different. And
Okay.
my focus right now is about the impact. And I think that for me is what's really key right now. So that's how I'd probably describe it.
Okay. So lovely. Like if I hear you right, you actually said that for you, excellence is much more about the impact that you are creating rather than achievement, which is probably
Exactly.
very
So
much
there's
more
like,
self-centered.
yeah, and it's almost like, yeah, okay, you've ticked off all of, say, like, let's look at the transformation as an example
Yes.
for
Mm-hmm.
excellence. Like, you've ticked off all your lists, fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Have you had an impact on some of those things? The answer is yes or no, right? So I think for me, focusing on the kind of outcome and impact, like, that's what for me, like, really demonstrates excellence.
So in that case, then, when you look at if your definition of excellence and success is about impact, what role does purpose play in excellence?
I think, again, it comes back to what do you want to be almost known for and seen for in terms of your
Mm-hmm.
purpose? Like, again, are you there because of your title? Or are you there because of your experience, your life experience you bring, your different thinking? That for me is so much more important. So it touches back on the thing that the piece that we talked about. It's not always the title that has the most kind of experience and
Mm-hmm.
impact. It's the way you show up, the way that you kind of learn and share your thoughts
Mm-hmm.
and ideas. So probably that kind of rings true, I think for me.
Okay. Speaking of impact, when you look back years from now, what impact do you hope people remember you for?
Um, I think like it's almost like my tagline, like he made things better.
Okay.
I would like at the bit for me, I would hate I'd hate to be known as that. Oh, you're an amazing transformation leader. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I think probably if you asked me that about 10 years ago, that would be what I would want my legacy to be. Whereas now it is about that I've made an impact, I've made things better, whether that's for my friends, my family, my work colleagues, the organizations that I go into, the charities that I support. Like that's what really drives me right now. So I think, yeah, like maybe that's just too simplistic, but definitely make things better. That's kind of
No, it's not.
how
And
I'd like to be
we
remembered.
can start to make that tagline for you, the tagline I said a while ago. Iwan
Need my
Roberts-Mok.
t-shirt here with he makes things better.
Your go-to to make things better. Uh, anyhow, I like since we're recording during Pride Month, I'd love to ask a personal question. What does Pride mean to you today?
Pride for me right now, it has never been more important to
Mm-hmm.
be a protest
Mm-hmm.
organization or kind of a vision. And the reason for that is you see so many parts of the world that are not only improving LGBTQ rights, but also we're going in the wrong direction in
Yes,
some
we're
areas.
reversing the direction.
Exactly. You look at things in the States, you look at things in Africa, things
Mm-hmm.
are not going in the direction.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, the reason we need Pride is that we do not have universal human rights. And that's not just for the LGBTQ
Mm-hmm.
plus community as well, but for particularly for Pride, it has never been more important for us to be visible and to protest about not having universal human rights. And I
Okay.
think for me, that is becoming more and more and more louder than it absolutely should be.
Okay. Uh, Great to hear that. Are there other message you would want the younger LGBTQIA professionals to hear?
Yeah, there's probably two things
Mm-hmm.
that stick out for me. One is let's not take for granted the rights that we have today,
Mm-hmm.
because they could quite easily just be removed as much as they were introduced. So for me, I think it's really important that we do that and we stick to remembering all of the pain and all the things people have done for us before. And I think that's still a huge factor to go, let's not take it for granted that we have some rights that are the same, but actually there is still a awful long way to go to make sure that we get those universal human rights. That's the big one for me, is not to kind of forget that. And then the other bit for me is being your kind of absolute authentic self and to role model that the more senior you get. I never realized how impactful that was until post Pearson going into Facebook. Like
Mm-hmm.
those for me like really stand out as moments where I never realized the impact I could have on being a role model as a LGBTQ plus leader.
Yeah, just being the authentic you. Actually,
Yeah, exactly.
you encourage and inspired other people. So that's really great to hear. We're at the last portion of our
Okay.
podcast, which I call the rapid fire round. So it's actually testing your uh, wit in that sense, or at least thinking on your feet, as they say. So let's finish with few quick questions. Not
Okay.
really one word answer or at least short answer, but it's like rapid fire.
Wait, when have you ever known me to be able to give a one-word answer? I'm not sure that was part of the rule book, but yes,
Yeah, so
let's
this is a
try.
test for you. So best career
Okay,
advice you
wow.
have ever received.
Stay true to your values.
Okay. A book that influenced your life.
Oh God. Probably there's a book called Reason to Stay Alive by Matt Haig, which talks about his overcoming like mental health challenges, everything about it, and it's such a beautiful read. But God, that is it's a very it's a tough book to read, but absolutely very impactful if you get a chance to read it.
Okay. One leadership quality you admired most.
Trust
Okay. One thing that gives you hope.
that there are more people in the world trying to make it better than the other way around.
Oh, hopefully that's true, and that they will be increasing. The first person you call when something wonderful happens.
Oh, Anson, my husband, every time. Like, he doesn't always listen, but he absolutely is the first person I call.
Okay. What do you hope your niece remembers most about you?
Um, a role model to her in her life and not such a terrible dancer as she makes out that I am.
Okay. You probably have answered this, but I'll ask it again. One word that defines success for you.
Balance and impact. I'm having two words.
Okay.
Balance and impact,
One
100%.
one word that defines purpose for you.
Impact.
Okay. And actually, my next question is one word that defines impact for you.
Opportunity, I think.
Okay, great. And my final question. So let's imagine many years from now, your niece is telling someone about you. What would
I
you hope she says?
Gosh. Like he stayed true to his values. Like that for me is probably the one, like, she asks questions, she talks about like her experiences at school. And like for me, the one thing I always talk to her about is like universal human rights and treating people with their like dignity and the respect and the compassion. And that's the bit that I'd love it to remember me for.
Okay, great. Yuan, I did not notice we've been actually talking for more than an hour. We originally planned for 30 minutes, but that means we have a lively
I'm so
conversation.
sorry. You know I can talk though, Alex. This is the problem.
No, 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 no. But it's great. We've talked about great length about important matters that I hope our listeners would actually enjoy and learn from. So thank you, thank you, thank you for agreeing to be my guest. One of the biggest takeaways from today's conversation is that success is not necessarily a destination. That success creates opportunities, as you mentioned. Opportunities create choices, and perhaps one of the most meaningful choices we can make is deciding how we use our talents, resources, and influence to help others. Listening to your story reminds us that impact can take many forms, and I will now always remember you. So every time I would think of you, I will now think of the tagline, Iwan Roberts-Mok, your go-to to make things better.
I like that. It could be worse. I'll definitely take that, Alex. Well,
So
listen,
yeah.
thank you so much for inviting me to, Alex. Like, it's been a lot of fun. So yeah, definitely look forward to speaking to you soon.
Yep, yes. And again, to everyone listening, if today's conversation inspired you, I encourage you to learn more about the charities that Yuan mentioned. We'll share it in the link once we post this podcast, and explore how you might support their mission, whether through donations, volunteering, sponsorship, advocacy. Please help. As Yuan has mentioned, success today is much more about how do you make things better for not just for yourself but for others. So until next time, again, thank you, thank you, thank you, Yuan, for guesting in my podcast, and have a great day, and talk to you again
Thank you,
soon.
Alex. See you soon.